Hi, my name's Masuma, and this is my book review on Peter Levine's book, Walking the Tiger, Healing Trauma. So I remember that I read this book when I was in grad school 20 years ago, and it was cutting edge at that time. And thanks to Peter Levine's work, which I'm really grateful for, and Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, it's so necessary to address the body. So I'd like to start off by sharing a personal story, which I think is really powerful in explaining Dr. Peter Levine's work. So the premise of the book is really about understanding how the body holds trauma. And what I've learned about that over the years, and especially rereading this book, is about the discharge, right? So when an emotion does not complete its cycle, it's arrested, and hence like a pipe, that's folded and the water flow doesn't move. It's stuck on a fascia cellular level. And he studied the animals in the wild, and he talks about how if you witness an impala being chased by a lion, when they finally escape, if they escape the lion, they will use a natural way of releasing that fight response, the cortisol that was pumping through their blood, by shaking and tremoring, and that it's a natural response, and that humans are the ones that don't do that when there's no safety to release it. So when I lived in Nairobi about 15 years ago, I was carjacked/kidnapped for 6 or 7 hours. And I remember that I had this incredible group of friends. And once I came out of the ordeal 6 or 7 hours later, and I went to my friend's house, they picked me up straight after. And they wrapped me in a blanket. And I said to them, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "Just trust us." And, like when marathon runners run, they have that foil around them. So they just put me in lots of blankets, and they laid me down on the sofa and just like all stood around me, like touching me, soothing me. And then the shaking began. And then did I shake? So I didn't really have a lot of release through tears, but my body was just tremoring. And I had gone into a very high functioning survival response during the time that I was carjacked. So I knew that I wouldn't be able to release. And then I further went to do acupuncture and really work in my body in the meridians. And I've also experienced what Peter Levine talks about, TRE, trauma release exercises, and they're so powerful. So I really appreciate the techniques that he discusses in the book. Inner resourcing, so important, right? So as I work with clients, I've seen how easily dysregulated they become just by recalling a traumatic memory, because we know that when your mind is recalling a memory, the body is responding to the memory as if it's happening in real time, which means people can be easily re-traumatized. And we have to be so careful as practitioners to make sure that they don't re-traumatize themselves. Or I've seen that they're fine in your office because now they've gone into freeze or they've disassociated, and then they leave and then they can't get out of bed for 3 days, right? Because they've gone into a full PTSD, like a trauma response, so that hasn't been held correctly. So I really appreciate Peter Levine's work around titration, pendulation, and also inner resourcing. I think I've used pendulation many, many times. Also combining Dr. Gabor Mate's work in compassionate inquiry. So, Peter Levine talks a lot about how it's like, dipping your toe in the water and like letting it stay there, or assuming the water's freezing cold and not comfortable. And then you kind of build that window of tolerance. And the more you dip in and the more you're able to self-regulate and stay in it, as he explains in the book, and come back into a state of regulation, and you're able to do that for yourself, it is so empowering for the client to learn this technique so that they can manage their own trauma response. He also talks about body-based movement practices like yoga, dance, tai chi. Again, he talks about how when we face trauma, we're completely disconnected from our body in order to survive the intensity of what's happening. So for me personally, and also according to Peter Levine, coming back into wholeness and healing from the trauma is really about reconnecting with our physical body, that many of us had to kind of leave the body to survive what was happening, especially clients I have who've experienced repeated rape, incest, or physical beatings. they really have a hard time going into their body because the memories come up so quickly. And the thing I hear the most from my clients is, well, if I go there, I'm afraid I'll open Pandora's box and I'll never be able to come back. And reading Peter Levine's work, and also with my own experience, this to me means that they don't have the regulation capacity and don't have inner resourcing. So it's really telling of how much people are asking for those parts to be developed before they can safely visit and have the chance to release that trauma that is so stuck in their body. So all of those points in the book were so profound. I really love how he shares case studies of his clients, his own personal stories, and just even when he shares, I became really aware of the markers of like, when are you dysregulated? I think it's also really important to learn that and to be able to share it with clients is like, how do we know we're dysregulated? How do we have that much awareness? How do we build that awareness in the body, in the mind? So what does it look like for you? For me personally, I go into a dorsal vagal, like I'm just completely beyond frozen, like I can sleep for days. And I know that it's a full body nervous system shutdown because I've gone so deep. And it's taken me a really long time to be like, what do I need to do to come out of this response? And as he talks about in the book, resourcing through nature, going for a walk, using water on your face, ice baths, all of these things that really help the body come back into a state of parasympathetic versus sympathetic, which of course he also goes into great detail about, where the nervous system is, what response it's in, and what a healthy nervous system would look like. So if you're, in a traffic jam and someone cuts you off and it pisses you off and you're triggered and you go into hyperarousal state, are you able to then come back and regulate yourself again, or does it throw you off completely? And I've seen people who've had a lot of trauma, at the smallest triggers that come through to them, they're completely dysregulated, and it's so difficult for them to come back into a state of regulation. And breath, of course, he talks about as well, is such a powerful practice, right? To really have that diaphragm breathing and feel the 360 breath. Very fast and effective way to, again, connect back into the body, to be able to hear the body's wisdom. So overall, I really enjoyed the book. I learned a lot from it. It was nice reading it after many years again. And I think that a lot of what he shares is, when you read it, you realize it's common sense. But of course, the fact that he frames it and makes it accessible as like 1, 2, 3, 4, pendulation, inner resourcing, titration, expanding the window of tolerance, all of these things, they really help me personally when I'm working with clients to know the direction, to notice when somebody is dysregulated and to not push them, and to really be trauma sensitive and meet the person where they are. And sometimes this takes a lot of patience. I had a client who had severe complex trauma. She was physically beaten in an orphanage from the age of 2 to 12, and then she was adopted and beaten again by her adopted parent. And she came to therapy for about 6 sessions, and we did some work and we used the body, but it was also noticing that was about all she could do for now. And then she needed to pause, and she's on a pause now. And I'm grateful that I didn't take it personally after doing it for many years. I think I get it now, that like everyone is only going to be able to do as much as they're resourced to do, and it's not personal. And I meet them where they are, and they, perhaps she's uncovered one layer, and that's as far as she can go into the pendulation in this moment. But the seed is planted. So that was my takeaway from the book. Thank you for listening.